5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Cue talent.
Welcome back to The Take on Point TV, a show where we get to hear different media professionals and their take on the media industry. I'm Isa, your Season 2 host, and we have an amazing show for you guys today. Our guests include Drake Hills, a sports journalist and lecturer. He has written for ESPN, Black Players for Change, and many other publications. Our second guest is Natalie Torres, a student here at Point Loma who is currently learning how to do stop-motion animation. Let's check out Natalie, who is going to share a little bit more about her journey with stop-motion animation.
Hi, I'm Natalie Torres. I'm doing stop-motion animation. I chose this because I love the movies The Night Before Christmas and Coraline, and I've just grown up watching like little short films of stop-motion animation, so I thought it'd be cool to learn how to do it myself. Something I struggled with was definitely making sure that the camera was steady during taking all the photos that I was taking for stop motion, and just like getting the right characters, because some characters tend to fall over sometimes when you're like keeping them steady or just like messing up the shot and moving. So just picking the right characters for it.
Welcome back, and I hope you enjoy getting to know Natalie. Join me in welcoming our third guest of the season, Drake Hills, a lecturer and sports journalist. Thank you so much for being here, Drake.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. So you've been doing journalism for a while now, right? So do you have a story or like a moment in your career that had like a great impact on you?
Yeah, I want to say when I got started, I think it's a very important part of a journalist's story. It doesn't matter if you're in sports or politics, arts and culture. For me, I actually came into college as a computer and IT major. So for me, the story kind of starts, there was a day where I was doing my homework, and that was the first time that I realized that my sports career, growing up, always being involved, playing multiple sports in childhood, that sports was actually going to leave my life. And that was such a intimidating and daunting realization. And so as I'm doing my homework and realizing, kind of playing back a lot of the compliments and the affirmations that I received from teachers and professors so early on in my education, that I was a really good creative writer. And the fact that sports and writing was a possibility, that started my freshman year of college and took me to countries I didn't know that I'd ever step foot in. So I think it starts there. And I would say another one is when I was covering Major League Soccer in the United States men's national team for the Tennessean and USA Today. And I wrote a story about how this loan deal with this black bank syndicate called the National Black Bank Foundation, how they leveraged this loan deal that they had with Major League Soccer. And what they used is to basically increase their capacity and their ability to loan out to other small businesses and other local community changers, if you will. And what happened was I was able to trace this loan deal with so much public relations, just juice, right? And I was able to trace that into actual impact in the community and finding this Citizens Trust Bank and a branch in Birmingham, Alabama, and how they were able to loan this cash flow into this dilapidated housing project in Birmingham, and how that created over 75 new units, all because of this loan deal. And so that's the impact that I think it gave to people in Birmingham, but I think also to soccer fans, and understanding that this league was creating an impact even off the field.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm such a big fan of soccer too, so
Yeah.
that's awesome to hear.
For sure.
So your main focus is sports journalism.
Yeah.
So what do you think makes like good storytelling in sports, and like how is that different from other like sides of journalism?
I think the basis doesn't change. The basis of good journalism doesn't matter if it's sports or something else. It's always based off of, why does this impact me? How does this impact me? How do I change? An editor always told me, one of them, I would say, he said, if you're not first, you got to be different. And if you're not different, you have to tell me something new, right? You have to be unique.
Yes.
And so those are the three options. If you're not first, you got to be different. If you're not different, then you got to be unique. And not only in terms of what you're reporting, but how you're reporting it as well. And I think that that's the basis for everything, not just sports journalism, not just if you're writing a news story, but also a feature, profile, trending, whatever it is.
And you think you chose like sports journalism because you had like an experience with sports and specifically? Or, like how did that work for you?
Yeah, I took a different approach. It's similar to that impact story that we just spoke about. For me, sports was never about who won and who lost. It was always about the people.
Yes.
And particularly as it pertains to people coming together, coming from different backgrounds, especially when it comes to socioeconomic class, race and ethnicity, gender, and finding a lot of the intersectionalities that people don't necessarily think about when they think of sports. Thinking about how teams are bringing together certain types of people, whether it's how they vote politically or the families and the neighborhoods that they grow up in socioeconomically, ethnicity, politically, all that stuff, what we would call as sports and society, is what drove me to not just cover sports, but really cover people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so your faith, you would say it's a big part of who you are too. So how do you think that shaped like your work in the industry as well?
Ultimately, it was about the listening part. I think as a journalist, we like to get so excited about the writing portion, but the reporting that's where the nuts and bolts, and to give you the content to be able to tell good stories. And for me, that allowed me to build relationships and my interview skills, and especially when it comes to being a good listener, being a forgiver 7 times 777. There's so many ways that Jesus, the apostles, and even in the historical books in the Old Testament, where you have so many men and women who were faithful in taking instruction, but also they were faithful in going out and being a good human in relationship with one another. I think about like David and Jonathan, how they took their relationship to almost to life and death, right? They went to battle with each other. I think there's the same thing when it terms of cultivating sources, is when you're out in the business, right? It's, you're away from your family, I'm away from my family. We are dedicating our time to this game that we love, this game of soccer. And a lot of time is spent when there is no game, whether you're at the training facilities, you're at a all-star break, you're at the MLS Cup final, and you're in rooms where there are a lot of tentpole events taking place, and it's an opportunity just to be in good relationship with one another. And so that allowed me to better my reporting. It allowed me to be a better interviewer and to be a better listener. I think ultimately that's what allowed me to tell good stories.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so important. That's nice to hear that too, like someone working in the media, because I feel like we don't hear the faith aspect.
Right.
So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So also, like, we hear a lot how the media world can be really hard to get into. So did you came across some story or some challenges while reporting something specific, and how did you handle that? Maybe made you question your career choice?
Yeah, my questions came, I think, once I was already in it. I was too gung-ho and focused on being in that space. I was hungry. I had been writing since I was in college, and I started freelancing for the Union Tribune my senior year at the University of Oregon. And at that point, it was all about, hey, I'm the guy who looks different, who talks different, who thinks about sports differently, and you're gonna see that in my work. And so I was super, I guess you could say, dialed in. I was narrow focus on expressing myself through my writing. And I think that's how I was able to break into the business, especially when it comes to having to earn your way. You can't really necessarily go and cover Major League Soccer and be full-time at the start. I was covering high school sports. I did, my first story, I believe, was a high school track and field athlete from Rancho Bernardo. I did softball, a softball athlete at El Camino High School in Oceanside. I wrote a story about a up-and-coming pitcher at Otay Ranch High School, preps, high school, before I was able to do college and professional sports.
Yeah.
And every reporter, if you're in sports, it should be high schools. If you're in community and news, it should be going into those local communities and telling those stories. That's how you break into the business. And I think now the media pressure and the parasocial relationships that we see with aspiring writers and young writers, how they immediately attract themselves and akin themselves to those who have had 10, 15, 20 years in the business. And they forget what those writers did radio broadcasters did, TV broadcasters did all that time ago. And that's where you can really try to latch onto that person. Try to get to know that mentor or that person you look up to when they were 15, 10 years younger. Get to know that person. Don't try to latch onto who the writer is or who the journalist is today. It's apples and oranges. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes and maybe the biggest discouragements in aspiring journalists today, is that they try to equate their aspirations to what people are doing now. And they should be equating themselves, not necessarily personally to other people. I know the Lord doesn't want us to do that, but in terms of the path to breaking into the business, a lot of the hard-learned lessons that these mentors and that these veteran journalists will tell you and share with you, that's kind of the golden nugget. And so for me, it was Charlie Litchfield, who is the one who introduced me to the late and great Bryce Miller, who was a columnist, a general sports columnist at the San Diego Union Tribune for years, who essentially, he was the one who kind of co-signed for me to start writing for the Union Tribune. And I had long conversations with the both of them about not just their writing failures, but also what it's like in the business, what it was like when they first got started at newspapers much smaller than the San Diego Union Tribune, the Des Moines Register in Iowa being one of them. So I think that ultimately it's all about finding the hard-learned lessons. Those are the nuggets that help kind of continue to keep that fight and as you're trying to break into the business. But I think now more than ever, independent journalism is kind of king.
Yeah.
It's taking off, right? It's not necessarily trying to write or trying to find employment with your local paper or your local radio station or your local TV station. A lot of it is, can you afford or can you find a way to get your hand on a camera and get your hand on some Adobe? I'm an Adobe guy, so for me it's Premiere Pro, or someone else it might be Final Cut. But can you get your hand on a piece of equipment, hardware, software, and just tell stories?
Especially now with social media, I feel like there's so much like open space for that. To, like just start like you said, freelance and just start telling stories.
Yeah, I mean, and then there's so many incredible, even nonprofit organizations. I think Voice of San Diego is one of the best in that field, but they're very unique, right? I don't think that every city has a Voice of San Diego, a Voice of LA, a Voice of Miami, a Voice of New York. Right? I think that model in terms of the nonprofit, donor-funded, grant-funded production where they're telling real hardcore community news and in so many different intersections. It could be sports, it could be state and local politics, it could be business and the expansion of the city of San Diego, education from K through 12 all the way up to higher ed. That's the type of organization I think that some students who are starting to matriculate into the professional business, that's who they should be looking for sure.
That's awesome. That's encouraging because like you have to start somewhere,
Right.
and so that's really good to hear. Like good advice for students as well.
Yeah, I mean, and the whole point is just to get in anywhere.
Yeah.
I think the name gets a lot of recognition, and that's cool. But the point is, can you get in where you fit in, is what we like to say.
Yeah.
And that's where you get a chance to express yourself and show your talents.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're also a professor, right?
Yeah.
Lecturer. So how's like your experience in the media shaped the way that you teach your students too?
Ooh, well, I will say that maybe not necessarily in some of my theoretical courses, but more so in my practical courses.
Okay.
I've taught sports journalism at a higher level. I've even taught even like basic reporting, like Reporting 1. In other classes or other universities, they call it media style and structure, which is basically your fundamentals, how to write a lead, how to write a nut graph, what's conflict of interest. That's a big one that students never like for me to discuss.
Okay.
But those are the key fundamentals that I like to equate to what a newsroom is like. Okay. So basically, to answer your question, the attitudes and the atmosphere of a newsroom, where I will walk into a classroom and I'll say, hey, we have an emergency press conference, breaking news. And I pick on every single student to ask a question. And then they have 20 minutes to give me 200 to 300 words on a news story. Because that's what it's like in the business. If you really want to do that, you have to be able to walk into a newsroom, quote unquote, and you're on your laurels, you're relaxed, you're chilling,
Yeah.
and next thing you know, something happens. And you have to go chase a story, you have to go chase sources, you have to put something together immediately because you're competing with other outlets. You're also competing with yourself. You're trying to get better. And so that's how I would say my newsroom experience, whether it be USA Today, Union Tribune, even with Vox Media, I did a lot of stuff with SB Nation. That's what I try to translate into the classroom. That's, in my opinion, the best way that you can prepare students for the real world of journalism.
Honestly, as a student, I would say that's the best way to learn.
Yeah,
Like,
it's not fun.
Yeah, it's not fun.
For a lot of students.
It's not comfortable, but
Yeah.
that's how you learn. I love that. So what is one piece of advice going to that, like you would give to students that want to follow that career path?
Wow, that's loaded because
It's a big question.
there's so many different ways I can go about it. There's advice surrounding career development. There's advice surrounding work-life balance and understanding what that looks like. There's advice about the finances and the business side of journalism. There's also advice about who you are. I learned early on in my graduate career at Northwestern, there's 3 C's that I essentially stand on, especially when it comes to advising younger writers, but also it really started with me in advising myself. One was confidence, one was character, and one was connection. So confidence is all about yourself in the space, in the environment that you're in. Whether for me, it was an NFL training facility, an MLS training facility, an NFL stadium, MLS stadium, a college, if I'm covering college sports, then there's the character. It's not only the brand, but what are you standing on? What are your ethics? How are you emphasizing the SBJ code? How are you going to represent yourself in those relationships with sources? I've often been kind of given the ultimatum, are you going to be a breaking news guy or are you going to be a relationships guy? I chose relationships. Some other reporters might want to choose breaking news.
Yeah.
But the point is that character, and you need to understand that going in. And a lot of the times that will evolve over time, especially when you bump your head 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times the way I did. When you mess up a headline or something is inaccurate in your story or you forget it in an interview, I had tape recorders. I didn't really use my phone much, but maybe the battery ran out on my tape recorder during an interview.
Yeah.
That's happened before. Sometimes I never actually pressed record after a post-match press conference, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Your character kind of evolves over time, but you have to understand that as well. And then your connections. Who else do you know in the business? Can you get some mentors, allies, not necessarily sources, that's more so on your relationships, but other reporters, other editors who are invested in your professional development and also your personal development as well.
That's awesome. That's great advice. Thanks for sharing that. Well, lastly, I just want to open the floor to you if you have anything else you'd like to share or any projects you're working on.
I think the academic world, when it comes to journalism, this is something that I've become more and more passionate about over the last year and a half to 2.5 years, is the need, especially for sports journalists, there needs to be in the journalism school on every campus, there needs to have a relationship between the sports media, not just sports journalists majors and faculty, but also sports comm, sports ad. There needs to be a sports media consortium that is a connection with the Department of Athletics at that university that is pivotal, especially in the world of name, image, and likeness, that benefits not only the professional edification of students and professional relevancy of faculty and staff, but also benefiting the brands that are being built for student athletes, especially here at Point Loma, we have incredibly successful basketball programs. We have that made a final.
Yeah.
And the D2 March Madness, right? Baseball, they're regionals, they're making the World Series, they're highly successful. Tennis, softball, so many other sports where in this world, student athletes are able to earn off of their name, image, and likeness, and they need help.
Yeah.
They need copywriters, they need art directors, they need those who can run cameras and those who can edit.
Yeah.
Highlight reels and their own documentarian kind of sphere of people who can help them tell their stories. What better way than for students who are on their campus who know what it's like being on that campus, who are their contemporaries, to help them tell them stories. And again, in name, image, and likeness, that means these athletes are getting a little bit of a dollar here and there. You know, maybe a student who might want to go to the CAF an extra time, might want to step off and go Liberty Station, treat yourself to something nice, or eventually save, having money in your pocket as you begin to approach graduation and maybe even after graduation. But also your resume. How thick of a resume could you have if an athlete who started from maybe earning just $50 here, maybe $20 there, $100, $500. It doesn't have to be a six-figure earner in name, image, and likeness. But to start with and grow with a journalist or someone who is very talented when it comes to the creative world, putting highlight reels together, maybe creating a documentary over the course of a season, their entire career. How valuable could that be on that professional's resume, where they can go to an ad agency, a PR firm who's been representing this athlete, or even a journalist that's been covering this athlete over 4 years. I think that's the success rate. And what I've seen from other universities, Oklahoma State University being one of them, University of Missouri being another, the partnership and really the understanding between a journalism school, a media studies, communications, with the Department of Athletics, I think in this era is now more important to have that relationship.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely so good to hear, because especially here, like Point Loma is such a big school with like sports and like the media department. So I think that will like definitely inspire students to get into that
100%.
more. And like you said, it's all about the relationships you build and like the experiences. You have to say yes more to like get the experience. So
Yeah, it's all about helping one another.
yeah,
That's also, it's biblical as
absolutely.
well. And of course, I mean, it helps the university as well build its reputation.
Absolutely. I believe that too. Well, thank you so much for being here and for giving all your insights in the media world. And hopefully get to hear from your work soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Isa, for having me.
Of course. Now let's jump to Aria, who's going to share a controversial media topic in our last segment, The Hot Take.
We need to talk about Instagram weddings, because somewhere along the line, we lost the plot. Weddings used to be about two people, a sacred covenant, and celebrating love in the moment. For Christians, marriage isn't just a party, it's a promise before God. It's about commitment, faith, and building a life together under Him. Now, it feels like weddings have become content factories. Everything from the proposal to the flowers to the candid shots is planned for the feed. And it starts way before the big day. Endless TikToks, multiple first looks, bridal events, the whole thing becomes a performance. Even the wedding itself can feel more like a production than a meaningful moment. Outfit changes, stage shots, drone footage, it's less about being present and more about going viral. And that's where it misses the point. From a Christian perspective, marriage is about God and the union between two people, not the audience watching online. Having a beautiful wedding is great, but it's more about clout than covenant, and that's worth asking why. At the end of the day, love, faith, and commitment should be the focus, not the content. Maybe it's time to stop living for the feed and start living for the moment. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to catch you next time. From the control room to your screen, that's The Take.